Well guys, I'm coming to you from FlatCon. It's a convention here in central Illinois, Bloomington Normal actually. This is kind of why I haven't been putting up a lot of new videos for the last couple of months. The few times I've been able to get into the studio, we've had to focus on something a little different, and today we're going to go over some of those things we've done. During this bolt action event that I'm putting on, we've got 10 tables designed. I'm going to be using 8 of them, so let's go ahead and take a look at the 8 different tables we got going here at FlatCon this year. Alright, this is our winter war table. At the studio we have a piece of essentially forest base, but it had the road painted on it. So we went ahead and put some white paint on it to give it the effect of snow, and we just kind of continued the roads out. So either this is dense terrain, but this roadway through the middle is open ground. So it's essentially 2 halves of the forest. There are dense terrain on either side of that forest, the road. So you can move quickly through it, but of course it's only really infantry. A Jeep can make it through there too. Probably a motorcycle sidecar will be able to get through there, but nothing much bigger than that. So not certain it's going to help anybody. Got some frozen ponds or ice flows. There's one right there. We're not counting anything on the mat, so like that frozen river section, that's meaningless. It's frozen solid, everybody can walk over it. But that's weaker, thinner ice. That's thinner ice. These are snow drifts, so these count as rough ground basically, so wheeled vehicles can't go over them. No cover, it just slows things down. Winter scene, so we've got some bare trees, some pine trees. It's fairly simple mat, kind of inspired a little bit, Finland, but the key here is we didn't want a lot of terrain kind of clogging up the whole board, but we wanted to have a lot of it look like a forested area. And if you've seen Clash of Heroes, actually either of our seasons, but especially first season, we've had some pretty intense forest boards, and it's kind of where we're trying to head toward with this, but we want a little bit more open because it is winter. So this hill is essentially rough ground, wide open. It blocks line of sight to provide hard cover. It's a pretty tall hill, but that's all there is really to that table. So it looks simple and wide open, but it really, when you've got vehicles that you want to move through here, there's very few areas where you can move quickly, and infantry are going to be slowed down heavily unless they go through these very narrow gaps. They're going to be advancing across the board otherwise, so gives players kind of a challenge, speed and cover. How do you want to make your way across the battlefield without getting blown off of it? Typical winter war type conundrums. So there's the winter war table. Let's take a look at the next one. This one's called the church. It's kind of a early spring kind of a table. Story being that the front has shifted over the last couple of weeks many times, and the last time the force occupied it, they had to be pulled back to reinforce against an enemy attack in a different sectors or nearby. And now that that's been blunted, both sides are racing to reach and occupy this church again. That's why you've got it basically fortified. Got some dense terrain here as far as forests go, and then the sandbags around it with a little bit of barbed wire here near where the crypts are to kind of slow infantry down through there. This is a snowbank or snowdrift that slows infantry down. There's another slow one there that is going to be also a snowdrift. It slows infantry. Roads don't give you any special movement. It's kind of too muddy this early in the spring. But that is the nature of this particular table. The building is actually broken up into 3 sections. Right at this point here, you have, this is one building, and units that are inside are assumed to be occupying the entire vertical distance. So they'll have a fire port out this window and then this door. This lower half here is the other half of the building, and then the steeple up here is the third section. Now, the objectives we're going to run here are going to be just outside, so really, an infantry in either of these two parts of the building will be able to hold or contest that. Units can be in the two different parts of the building and simply shoot each other if they want. There would be no cover, but they can be close enough. It's going to be interesting to see how the players try to struggle over that particular objective. Other than that, the objectives I've kind of laid out are kind of near the crossroads and points of entry toward this area, kind of gatekeeping, if you will, the terrain. And this one section here is sort of kind of like an iced over section, so nothing can be on that. Nothing can move over it, infantry or artillery or anything. That's designed to kind of prevent units from just camping right there behind that piece of terrain. Well, there's plenty of other terrain that the players can camp behind. Of course, they can camp further back, but then they're a little bit more exposed to line of sight from the opponent. It shouldn't be a major impact to the table. So as they're making their way through here, none of this printed terrain really matters. It just represents soggy ground, and hence with the mud effect, basically that's why the roads don't give any road bonus. These crypts are really impassable terrain, but they provide good hard cover. But that is the only way into this churchyard without going through over the sandbags. That's why there's a single piece of barbed wire, and that is obviously a removable obstacle should someone want to try. Why you would, I don't quite know, since you actually can come over the sandbags. If nothing else, it's a good piece of good-looking terrain. All right, so this is early spring. The war has started back up in the sector, and now they're going to be fighting over this church. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. This one's called the Oasis for obvious reasons. Now this one, we had a lot of fun building. Dave and I, like I said, mentioned we did all these tables. We both had harebrained schemes and fed off each other as we came up with these. So here, we took a look at some of the terrain we had, and I thought, man, this would be great. Just have on either side of that road, and just put a sand dune in the middle, or drifted sand. So this basically slows any vehicles down. They don't get open ground. They do not get road movement. There's open ground here, but this is rough ground, so your wheeled vehicles aren't going through there. Your tracked vehicles can, and half tracks can. The rest of it basically is wide open, except for the line of sight blocking elements, which are the buildings and the old ruined walls in this old. It's not really an abandoned village. It's been abandoned because of the war. But this is. These are kits from what used to foreground when they were still around, and you might have seen these in some of my videos. Now we've got, essentially these are rough ground, no cover, unless they are blocking line of sight at some point. So you're shooting across this to infantry over here. If you cannot see, most of the unit, it's hard cover because it's ground. Same thing with that. And so there's some good view blocks to prevent indiscriminate shooting across the table. But movement is dangerous because you're always going to be caught in the open unless you can get within this maze of ruined walls and things. So it's going to be deadly, much like the desert warfare was. This particular piece of terrain, we're counting the whole thing as area terrain, but it's not. It isn't dense terrain. It is light cover when you're on it. Obviously, nothing can go through here unless you happen to have the amphibious rule. And these also, just like with the all the day tables where we have these palm trees, shooting over a palm tree's base can provide soft cover. It does not block line of sight. It's only soft cover. So these are essentially area terrain, they're not dense terrain. Buildings can be occupied. The key thing here is, because they have a rampart on top, the rule that we're going to use is when hit with indirect fire, with HE, you will have to roll on whether it explodes on the top, or actually enters the building. If it explodes on top, you get to place your template against the infantry as normal. Otherwise, it penetrates through and treated as exploding inside the building. So that's the way we're kind of running that one. All right, here's our desert market. Now this actually went through a slight revision here on the event day, because we have a cloth mat, the dual-sided mat. One side's desert, one side's grassland. It's just a smidge narrower and shorter than a 4x6, and that's what we designed this table for. So we had set it up according to that. But since we only needed one desert table per day, we decided to use the full 4x6 mat here and shift things around slightly. So roadway through here, obviously there's no desert road movement bonuses, it's just open ground. These kind of canyon walls, units can be on top. Artillery and vehicles cannot leave it or come up with it, but infantry can use an advance, counting the 2-inch distance, vertical distance, against them. So they can, if they're right at the edge, they can advance 4 inches out. So it's 2 inches down, 4 inches out. Nice little rock prison with some walls, pyramid. Here's a trick: get some sphagnum moss, and if you happen to have some 40K type details, you just always can cover them up. That was a brilliant move from Dave. I decided to put an Oasis here to block any type of outflanking movement as far as like vehicles or infantry skirting around the pyramid. It kind of forces the action into the center of the table. Of course, over here there's plenty of area to move. All the houses start being hardcover like anything else. You've got the rooftop rampart, except for the domed one. Open market with I forget what they call those things. They're not obelisks, but obelisks are they're kind of square with the pointed top. That's I forget what they call those columns, but anyway, so that is the desert table that we're using on the second day. Hopefully find some challenges in this one, because again, there's plenty of cover but a lot of open space, and there are some very narrow long-range firing lanes, especially in this side, opening up with that across the road. So we'll see how they like this table too. All right. Well, here is our jungle table. Kind of, anywhere in the South Pacific. Simple jungle look, and a couple different hills set up on the corners. Nothing too difficult as far as movement and such. Key feature in the center is this small shrine in the middle of that pond. The stone causeway is the only way onto it. It can be occupied as a small building. However, it may not have much tactical significance. We do have a temple here, and this is a piece of terrain that basically counts as almost a ruin. It's not a building per se, so you can actually deploy snipers and such on top. Nothing can move between the top and bottom of that during the game. Now, movement down below, it's like through open ground. It's a real line of sight here, so it's hard cover if for the normal rules. It's Small hill for difficult terrain, just some small stands of trees, little garrison camp with a lookout tower. Now these two stone outcroppings, for lack of a better term, similarly to the temple, you can start units, small teams, up on top as long as they can fit. I mean, there's enough room on top here to put those, sniper teams, or even your artillery spotter if you happen to have one, or a forward observer. Just like the temple, you can't scale them up or down during the game, but you can deploy units on top of those units. The idea here with this is essentially to give some nice visuals, as well as plenty of room to maneuver with enough line of sight blocks. For example, the actual rock outcroppings are complete line of sight blockers. You do have the buildings that block line of sight, this one piece of dense terrain, and then these essentially don't block line of sight. However, they're soft cover if you shooting through the base at anything. All the buildings on here, all those buildings, 4 of them, are only soft cover. So that's how we went ahead and ruled those. Moving down, this is going to be rough terrain, but it's a nice simple table. Hopefully the players will enjoy it. Alright, so here is the Autumn Manor table. Essentially it's partial urban. Took basically a 3 foot by 3 foot green piece of fabric and created this little manor estate. Put a couple farmland kind of things, made this one into a vineyard using some of Pegasus's barbed wire fence kits. So it's not barbed wire, it's just vineyard trellises. Most of the scenery is foreground. You've seen these buildings before. A lot of cover. This is just one of those boards that really we got laid it out, trying to figure what to do with a city mat, and when Dave threw down that green fabric, it's like, wow, that gives us ideas, and we just ran with it. So hedges are basically block line of sight unless you're literally in base contact. So you can shoot through it if you're up to it, but you can be shot if you're if you're touching it. Otherwise, it blocks line of sight. These are just shooting light cover. The little row of ornamental trees on either side of the walkway to the manor, or at the edge of the manor property. Basically, if you line of sight crosses it, it counts as light cover. But otherwise, it does not block line of sight. Doesn't slow down movement. The vineyard, if you obviously moving up, along the rows, no movement penalty. Moving across the vineyard, you can only advance over it. Wood fence around the farmland or vineyard that's being reworked. So obviously light cover. We use this spot here to kind of cover the road that was printed on, just so that it's not apparent to the players that there's a road there. That's kind of the approach we took. Road to nowhere. Obviously that doesn't give you any kind of road movement, and there's really no point with road movement here. Plaza's nice. Got that, what do you call it, monument. She'll set it up like that. So we've got a little placard now. 3 stories. Most of those buildings are 2 stories. Objectives pretty much evenly across the table. 1 in each deployment zone kind of thing. That's kind of the standard I'm using here this year at this event. So nice cemetery kit. So that came out really nice. And it's just some 4 little foreground walls next to the just a regular city park there with some plaster walls. So that is our Autumn Manor. Let's see the next one. All right, now this is the Ruined Villa. This is a board I really enjoyed making. Dave and I had a blast coming up with this one. And when I saw some of the terrain that we had at the studio, kind of gave me the ideas. And so the key pieces of this are the river that divides the table not quite in half. It does cause some serious strategic or tactical dilemmas for both players, actually, depending on the scenario. Obviously, the roads, this ruined mountaintop, the ruin on top of the hill, and a lot of the rough ground. Now, this particular piece of terrain is an old 3D print, old ruined wizard's tower, but you know what? It looked cool. We decided to put it in, and we've made some special rules for some of the, well, especially the tower, but some of the terrain. So let's kind of go over some of those things. First of all the rivers and its lake, obviously, are completely impassable to everything, unless, of course, it has the amphibious rule. So your ducks and your DD tanks can go right through it. The roads are, they give road movement up until you reach a crater. Those craters essentially interrupt the road movement. So coming on the table, whether it's first wave or whether you're in deployment zone, you can move all the way up here on a road fairly easily. I don't think it's not quite 18 inches, a little more than 18 inches. So a tank coming in, track vehicle coming in off this won't make it all the way up here, but it'll make it up near or onto the bridge. Half track vehicles, kind of the same. Kind of the same thing. Wheel vehicles obviously can go all the way. Now this does not prevent wheel vehicles moving through it, but it does interrupt the road movement bonus. So the next turn, once they get past this, they'll be able to use road movement. But again, there's one right there, one here, one there. So you really can't use road movement through the middle of the table. Only up to the other side of the bridge. It was purposely designed that way to allow vehicles to get in there quick. Now there's central ruin, and definitely there's got to be an objective in there. It just screams objective point. We got a couple ruins on the other side. This is, like I said, a ruined villa. So we've got a couple objectives again. Same style of objective setting with kind of a cross instead of an X. This is over here. Now, the special rules we've got, let's start with this tower. Ruins section is just butts up against it. There's nothing special about that. It's just ruins. True line of sight, basically. So there's some window ports, a door port. You can kind of shoot out those. It's ruins in other case, and obviously it's not dense terrain, it is rough ground. The tower itself can only be occupied by units of 3 or fewer men. Okay. Now the first floor only has the one fire point, which is the door, the door entryway. That's the first floor. There is a second floor, but there's no fire points in it. Finally, there is a third floor, and let's go to the other side and show you how this one works. All right, so there's the top of the ruin. This is why it's only usable by 3-man teams. So snipers, air observers. Honestly, if you can get a mortar up here, you could. I don't know why you'd want to. But the way we ruled this, because of the nature of this terrain piece, this is such a ruined old wall. There's plenty of openings in the mortar work. So units that are up here can fire 360 and be seen from 360. So if units are up here, this does not block line of sight in or out. So you're up there, you can be shot and you can shoot out. Okay, that's the way it kind of works. Now you do get hard cover because it is woods. Even though this piece out here, the whole thing is considered hard cover. But again, the only way up there is going through the second section, so you actually do a run move to get up here. So moving from first floor to third has to be a run move. You cannot stop in the second story. So you can only move from first floor, run to the third floor. Go from the third, run to the first. There is no middle story to occupy. Now again, the way the rules are, you have, in order to hold the objective, you need to be in the first floor. So that's definitely give the opponent something to think about. Either, how do you use it? How do you want to deal with this? You want to stay near the ruins? You want to get in the house? Stuff like that. Or not the house, but the first floor. All right, here's another look at the ruins we've got. Now, rough ground is kind of scattered about here. Can't quite move freely around the building because of the rough ground in the way. There's some nice little channels around some of these areas. This is rough ground, this is rough ground, this is rough ground. They don't provide cover, just rough ground. These are dense terrain, all the forests. There's only 3 of them. And this is rough ground over here as well. This is the only full building that's undamaged. It does have 3 levels. If you deploy something in the top at the start of the game, like a sniper, you can create a loophole. Otherwise, there is 1 fire point here, 1 on each floor here, and then you've got essentially 1 on the other side and 3 on the face. I'll go ahead and take a look at the other side of this building. So here, you've got this fire point on the 2nd floor only, nothing on the 1st floor, which is the opposite of this side, which is fire point on the bottom, nothing on the top. And here you've got 3 fire points. Makes sense so that the door faces the road, so that's how that works. Now you should be able to fit a wheeled vehicle through here, no problem, armored car. Not through here though. Infantry can move through there though, so that makes it pretty smooth. Trying to move through to the road, it's going to have to maneuver around here, so this kind of interrupts that. And provides a little bit of cover, especially for small teams that might be able to be behind it. Another piece of ruin here, nearby an objective marker. This, again, just little pieces of rough ground to break things up. And then right here in the middle of the lake is this island. And that can block a line of sight, which is useful because there's so much open ground when you look at that across that lake. So things hiding behind that, or even partially obscured, that gives them, hard cover. Whether it's coming from the, you're firing from the ruins or across the open lake here, whether it's from the road or the ruins or even trying to shoot up to the area underneath that hill. Finally, there's the old ruins on this hilltop. Now this spot can be occupied and moved. This is rough ground. It is not dense terrain. Provides hard cover for infantry and artillery. Does not provide cover for vehicles. They're just too big. And of course, being that this is rough ground, wheeled vehicles won't be able to be in there. But it's a great place to put your tanks or your, well, I don't know if you want to put a half-track in there, but this is a good place to put your artillery support and your vehicular support. It's got good line of sight to 2 of the objectives in the middle. That one's hidden by the forest, so it's not a bad spot. Obviously, it can also protect this. It covers the crossroads. It's just a good vantage point, but of course, a vehicle sitting up there is wide open to attack. So you got to play that particular spot carefully. So there's the ruined villa. We'll have to see how the players enjoy that one. Let's take a look at the next table. All right, there is our abandoned factory table. This is entirely Dave's crazy idea. So we had some, these are like floor tile, floor tiles. But I guess they're put on MDF, are they?
Yes.
Yeah. So 18 inches.
It makes it 4x4.
Almost 3x3 basically. Yeah. And we put the little straight small rivers through it to give it a little canal with some toxic waste flowing into it. Some like coffee can type storage tanks. Nice factory shed. Dave's the Egg Panther, he went ahead and we're making a wreck just for looks. Crane that is completely usable. Up here, there's enough room, it's stable enough for a sniper team to be up there if they really want to, or any type of mortar spotter, artillery spotter, which would be a good spot for them considering they're always considered down. Yeah, just nice open space here with a lot of clutter. This building is a kind of a generator building, so it's got 3 stories, but it's scaffolded. So inside you have, basically a generator takes up the whole height with scaffolding around it. So you can have guys inside any of the 3 levels, 1, 2, or 3, and they can, just like any multi-story building, you treat it exactly the same way. The only oddball thing is that the front, there is no windows out. All the windows are out this way on the 2nd floor and the door on the bottom. Nothing on the top as far as windows except on the very end. So that's a Pegasus model that we got. So that's kind of the oddball in that whole section. This chain link fence is essentially just for looks. It does obviously block movement. A little stone wall to make movement harder off the section of the city that has been bombed, and subsequent battles have been fought over it. So we've got some wrecked Panzer IVs, wrecked Shermans, wrecked Sextons, half tracks, just littering the battlefield. And so that provides a lot of heavy cover or hard cover, ruins. All the streets are pockmarked, so those are considered there's no road movement bonus, but it is open ground. And again, we're playing from one side to the other, so there's plenty of angles to get movement. Obviously, getting across here, wheeled vehicles won't be able to cross here, but infantry or artillery can't. But this counts as an obstacle, so tracked, half-tracked, and infantry can cross over that with an advance. Good firing lanes, but a lot of hard cover to kind of make it a little bit challenging. This terrain, if a unit actually gets in it, it's got hard cover. Otherwise, it really doesn't. And again, shooting over it, it's hard cover because it does take up some room. So that is our abandoned factory. All right, we'll see how everybody enjoys it, and I'll give you a recap once this is all over. All right.